Wouldn't it be nice if every time you wrote copy for your coaching business and sent that copy out into the world, that copy did its job and actually helped someone get what they need to make a decision and say yes to your coaching? Now, when it comes to writing this kind of copy, more often than not, it takes two key ingredients. Number one, sharing something that is resonant and relevant for your reader, for your best fit client. And two, sharing that really resonant, relevant thing in a way that sounds like you. When you nail these two key ingredients, that's when you've got what you need so people can read your copy, read your emails, and it feels like you're right there in their head speaking directly to them. Now, in this video, I am going to help you with the latter of those two key pieces. I'm going to share 5 of my very best tips for writing with more of your personality. If you spent your school years in English classes that taught you a very specific way to write and communicate in English, then there's a bit of a difference between all those ways that your English teacher wanted you to write back then compared to here and now writing copy for your coaching business. It's easy to internalize these ideas about how you should sound in your writing, but too often it means all your writing comes through with stiff and formal and professional, and I use quotation marks for that because it's a myth to believe that professional translates to stiff, boring copy. Instead, when you can write with your personality, and I mean your personality, not just more personality in general, your way of communicating and expressing yourself in that unfiltered way, that is a powerful skill to hone and to bring into the copy that you write for your coaching business. So let's dive into my first of my 5 best tips. Number 1 is quantity, quantity, quantity. When it comes to digging into how you express yourself naturally through your words, through your writing, it cannot be overstated how valuable it is to just do lots of writing. As I just mentioned, you spent years in school and maybe even college and university and after school and corporate world, who knows, practicing a very different style of writing. So when I talk about quantity, quantity, quantity for this first step, I'm talking about unfiltered writing. This is where you throw out the rules, where you throw out this idea that anyone's listening or going to read what you write. And in order to create that kind of safe space for you, my favorite tool for this is an app called 750words.com. 750 Words gives you this beautifully clean type interface, and for myself, I've just found that it's much easier to write in that unfiltered way. Now, if you don't want to spend another $5 a month on another subscription, then maybe it's your notes app or some other app or place or in front of you on paper, whatever it takes to unlock that part of your brain that says, this isn't for anyone else to read, this isn't for any other purpose, simply than to see what's in my brain and how it likes to be expressed in written word without any of those other internalized messages of what it's meant to sound like. It's really important to know that this tip, this step of quantity, quantity, quantity isn't about writing things that you're going to use in the copy for your emails or your sales pages or your social media posts or anything like that. This is quantity for quantity's sake. Now, as I say that, if your brain's like, oh, this just sounds tiresome and really inconvenient, can I just skip this step? I want you to know that this step, even if it's just 5 minutes a day that you give yourself to write unfiltered, is going to be the difference between you knowing that you have your own unique way of saying things and you actually discovering what that unique way is, what that voice is. And that's why this quantity, quantity, quantity step is so valuable when it comes to writing with more of your personality. So give yourself the chance to peek into and uncover what your natural style is by doing this practice. Tip number 2, write like you talk, or in other words, use lots of contractions. So when you're talking in real life, a lot of the time you're not saying things like I am and you are. You're saying I'm and you're and there and isn't and aren't. And all of those contractions sound so conversational. But one of the first things to go out the window when you sit down to write copy, copy that you want to sound like you, to sound like a human who's speaking to another human, instead of using those contractions, you default to all of the learning you did of not using those contractions. So you start spelling out the words I am and you are and they are instead of I'm and you're and they're. So one of my favorite tips for taking anything you've written and making it instantly more conversational, sounding more human, more like it actually came from you having a real life conversation with your reader, is to go through and take all of those words that you'd usually say as one word and change it into its natural abbreviated form. Which brings me to tip number 3, read it aloud. This sounds so simple, and it is also such a game changer, because when you take the time to read what you've written out loud and to hear in your own voice what it sounds like, you are going to pick up on so many things that sound unnatural and don't sound like anything you would actually ever say in real life. So this step, you're going to want to skip it. You're going to think, oh yeah, it's fine if I just read it through without speaking it aloud. But when you stop and slow down enough to force yourself to read it as though you were practicing for a speech, that one act can make the world of difference between what you send out sounding okay and what you send out sounding like you actually would say it in that real life conversation. My 4th favorite tip for writing with more of your personality is to put what you've written through the bestie test. This is where, again, you read what you've written and you ask yourself, you put it through the filter of, if I sent this or said this to my best mate, would they think this sounded like me? Or would they think, did Mish write this with ChatGPT today? Is she feeling a bit off? Does she think I'm her English teacher? Does she think I'm her boss at work? Why is this so formal? That's what makes this bestie test such a powerful filter, because when you start thinking of the person receiving this as someone that you're as casual and real with as your best mate, that's going to bring down so much of all of those internalized, formal, professional rules that are currently getting in the way of your writing sounding like you. Which brings us to my 5th and final tip for writing with more of your personality, and that is to let yourself be too much. A lot of the time when you're writing, you're getting your copy out, you're automatically filtering how you would say things because you're worried that what you're writing is going to be too much, that you're going to be too much, that the people reading it will judge you as too much, whether it's too unprofessional or too flippant or too sincere or whatever those adjectives that you judge yourself as being too much of. All of that stuff is running under the surface when you sit down to write copy. And that's why explicitly giving yourself permission to be too much is going to help break down that wall a little. And the other part of this is that by writing and allowing yourself to be too much to start with, you tell your brain that we're writing like this now and we're going to edit it later. This is going to make a world of difference from what you're probably currently doing, where you're filtering all of yourself out before it even has a chance to get on paper or to get on the screen in front of you. And then you're still editing before you hit send. By following this tip, you let yourself write unfiltered, being too much, saying things how you want to say it in that first rough draft of your email, your post, your sales page, whatever it is, and then giving yourself permission as you're writing, as you're noticing your brain wanting to edit things out and say things differently. Thank you, brain. We're just going to write first and edit later. Now, these tips might seem so simple and basic, but they are so key to actually unlocking more of your personality in your copy. If you want to get exposed to this personality-rich copywriting, the kind of conversational copywriting that isn't formal and stiff or overthought and instead sounds conversational, and what an impact that can make in the entertainment and joy of reading emails and other pieces of copy, then you need to join my email list. The link to sign up is in the video description below. In every email I send out, you'll get that feel of me and my personality, and you'll get to see what a difference it makes when you go ahead and apply these 5 of my very best tips.